Let's recap. We spoke about previously that the first thing a person has to do is to verify what is chivasa ba'olamai. What is it that you need to do in your world, in the individual? And that is the first objective to obtaining the ultimate pleasure, which is why Hashem created us, is of the self, of your world. As my chavrusa Rabbi Feldman likes to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, is everything. We're not. So how exactly are we supposed to access Him, connect to Him, what's called dvekas ba'yizbarach? The answer is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Elikam Amal. He's the God up above. We are, as the Mekabalim say it, Cheluk Elikam Amal. We are a piece of God above. Which that tells us is that, as we said previously, the only liberated individual, as the Maral shows from the Matzah, is when ein lo shum tzeiruf el zulasai, when you're not connected to anything else but being your chelik elikam amal. That's how you connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu to dvekas ba'yizbarach, to getting the ultimate pleasure. Yet all this sounds very counterintuitive to the Jewish soul and culture. Take the Decalogue, the Aseret HaDibros. Half is about Hashem, and the other half is about others. Nothing about the self. The Akdama of the classic Sefer on Machshava, Nefesh HaChaim, from Chaim Volozhiner, his son says that his father told him, you know what the most important thing in the world is? Lizulasai, for other people. Don't all the sources say that what are we here for? It's l'chvei d'barasav. Hashem says, I made the world for my honor, that it's to be mekadesh and to miyachad shemay, to sanctify, to unify His name. What's all this focus that we're talking about the self? So there's a famous mission beginning in Masechtas Avos that says, Al shleisha dvar ma'oil maimed. The world stands on three things: Al Torah, Val Avoda, Val Gemilas Chasadim. On the Torah, the acts of service, and acts of kindness. What are these three? And why in that order of Torah, Avoda, and Gemilas Chasadim? So the Maral in this Pirush on Masechtas Avos, Sefer Derech Chaim, explains as follows by quoting a pasuk. The pasuk says, Imru l'tzadik yitayv. Tell to the righteous person who's good. So the Gemara in Kedushin Amem and Alf says, what? Is there a righteous person that's not good? Says the Gemara, yes. Tayv l'shemayim ve'ena tayv l'briyas. Something that's good with heaven. He has a good relationship with Hashem, with God. But he's not good to people. Zeu tzadik she'ena tayv. That's a righteous person who's not good. So what that tells us is, first, you have to have a avoda. That is bein adam lamakim, which is a person's relationship with Hashem. Then you can have Gemilas Chasadim. That is bein adam lachaver, the relation between interpersonal relationships. And that's where it's avoda, and then Gemilas Chasadim. You'll have it tzaddik ki tayv. As the Chazon Ish in the Sefer Emunah B'Tachan illustrates very powerfully, the grave errors that people have with kindness without first submitting to Hashem and to avoda, to bein adam lamakim. So then you have it tzaddik ki tayv. However, says Maral, Ubevadai mikol shekain, and most definitely, tzarich sheyeh ha'adam shalom ba'atzmoi, that a person has to be complete in himself. V'im lo kain ein tzaddik klal, because if not, he's not righteous at all. Yes, a tzaddik that's not good is someone that has a good relationship with Hashem and not with others. A tzaddik ki tayv is someone that's tayv l'shemayim and tayv l'briyas. He has avodah and gemilas chasadim. But you have to first be a tzaddik, a righteous person. What makes you a tzaddik, before if we decide if you're tayv or not, is the Torah. First, you need to be a someone who then has a relationship with Hashem and then others. As the Gur Aryeh, the Maral, and Bereshis, and Perek Yudal says that hahaschala, the beginning, Tanai b'metzias hasayf, is the condition, the stipulation for the essence of the end. Which tells us that to have avodah gemilas chasadim, what the Mishnah is telling us, you first need Torah. Like Maral says, ha'adam nivra la'atzmai. Man was created for himself. If the person is disgraced himself and is not significant, harehu briya shel tayu. He's a creation of emptiness. There's no substance over there. So Torah is the first order. That makes the person whole. How does it do that? Says the Maral, Mechaber helakayusei shel nishmasei. It connects the godliness of his soul imchmiyusei shel gufei v'olamai, with the physicality of his body and his world. What Maral calls bein adam la'atzmai, between a person and himself. As we'll explore, there's many parts to us. The ideal parts of us are identified with our intellect versus our base parts that cop out. As explained by the Chovos HaLevavos in Shah Prishas Perek Beis. It says, Kavanas HaTorah, the intent of the Torah, which is what we're discussing, which makes us, is lahamshel haseichel, is to have the intellect dominate b'chol taivas hanefesh, for all the desires of the lower part of the person, v'tanugis haguf, and all the pleasures of the body, u'lag biralein, and to have it master over them. U'minay yadua, says the Chovos HaLevavos, because it's known, ki hagvaras hataivas ala seichel, when the desires dominate the intellect, he roish kol chatas, it's the beginning of all sin, v'sibas kol gnus, and it's the reason for all disgrace. And this is what's encapsulated in the famous Talmudic dictum, Barasi Yetzer Hara. Hashem says, I created the evil inclination. Barasi lo Torah tabun. I created the Torah as the antidote. And that is the challenge of the self. And that is clear. We're wired for pleasure. But which one? Says Ramchal in the beginning of Mesilas Hashem, Lisaneg, for pleasure. Which one? But al Hashem. Please, Judaism is all about pleasure. But be a connoisseur. Don't settle. It's a battle of self-identity. Like the Gemara in Shabbos of Kuf Hayam Abayis quotes a pasuk. It says, Lo yibacha el zar. There should not be in you a foreign god. In you? Says the Gemara, Ezehu el zar sheish b'guf shel adam. What's the foreign god that's in the body of the person himself? Says the Gemara, Zeh Yetzer Hara. That's the evil inclination. You ever hear people say, I'm not myself today? Then who exactly are you? Says the Alei Shur Shlomie Volbi, says, you know what the Yetzer Hara is? Zeu koyach shel zaris ba'adam. This is the power of alienation in the person. Im hu mishtalet ala adam, if the Yetzer Hara rules, dominates the person, hu nasa zar la'atzmai. He becomes foreign to himself. Zar mamish, literally foreign. B'li regesh, without emotion. B'li havana, without understanding. B'li kesher, without being connected. B'li ahav, without love. The first pillar of the world, your world, stands on is a relationship with the self. Like Rabbi Yochanan Levavitz, the Mir Mashgiach says, Ha'adam hu ha'Torah v'ha'Torah hu ha'adam. The man is the Torah is the man. As the pasuk says, Kikarv eilecha hadav miyad. This thing of the Torah is very close to you, beficha b'vavcha l'asayse, in your mouth, in your heart, to do it. As in secular understanding, where it went from Homo erectus to Homo sapien, it's beyond that. Torah is the vehicle for becoming the ultimate self. As Maral puts it down in the Siv Ahavas Reya, Perek Aleph, he says, you know what the purpose of the Torah is? That a person should acquire this ultimate elevated status of being a person who tzelem elikim. That's what's known as being in the image of God. Ki kol Torah kula perish. You know what the whole Torah is as a commentary of? How to become the tzelem elikim, to become the ultimate person. You know why there are a certain amount of positive commandments in the Torah? Heim ramach, there are 248. Why that number? Like the number of limbs in a person's body. The limbs in the person's body is his image. And the entire Torah's commentary in this idea, how to become the ultimate person. And we have many psukim saying this idea. Torah Hashem Temimo. What is the Torah that's complete? Meshibas nafesh, restores the soul. Machkimas pes, he makes the foolish smart. It's a Eitz Chaim, it's a tree of life to become the ultimate person. See, we choose our car before we start the games. We get to select our avatar before we start to interact. The same thing is in life. Either, as the Yalkut Shoftim says, l'chol hargasha v'hargasha, for every emotion, for every feeling. Nasna Kadosh Baruch Hu Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Torah what? What to do and what not to do. As we say in the Amidah, at the end, P'sach libi b'sar yasecha, open my heart in your Torah. Then, v'achar mitzvasecha turdayef nafshi, then after your commandments, my soul will run. As in the words of Yerucham again. To change our physical nature to match our souls. That's choosing the Torah. That's one type of a person. Or the opposite of Gilei Arayis, licentiousness, which is the ultimate losing of the mind, as Chazal called a Maisa Behema, when there's the Ruach Shtus, disconnecting ourselves from our higher self, devoid of any true meaning or connection. And that's what Gila Rayis is the opposite of Torah. It's a progression of alienation, starting from things like anger, which is so common and derided, where a person first disconnects from themselves, their intelligence, their neshama, their Torah, to avodah zarah, disconnecting from God. And finally from others, whom we treat as a zar through slander. So first we need to be a vessel for the Or, which are the two luches. And that is because it says, Kasvim aluach lebecha. What the writing is on our hearts are the luches. And you're right, what is life without God, inside and out? But first you need to show up. As the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh says, in the pasuk, Va'at madvekim Hashem alekeichem chaim kulchem hayom. You who cling to God, you're living the ultimate life. Says the Baal Shem Tov. It says, Va'atem hadvekim. You first need to be you. Then after there's you could cling to God. As Rav Hirsch so eloquently put it. He says, in a democracy, the people make the law. In Judaism, the law makes the people. Same thing is with others. No man can be an island. But a person has to understand, he's first. In Adam negea b'muchan lechaveri, no one touches what's with someone else's, even like that of a thread. As my cousin Johnny Gewurtz, who authored The Observant Jew, saw once when he was in shul, he saw a doctor get a beep on his beeper, and he ran out and he was like, wow, that must have been something very important. But me, what do I get? Text from my wife? And they realize, you know what? For me, for my world, it's the same thing. It's just as important. He lives his world, I live my world. That's what's known as hashgacha pratis. There will never be another me. I don't want to be anyone else. When I can become myself, only then can I interact with the rest of the world. So of course, our mission is for God and our fellow men. But first we need Torah to be the appropriate person, that vehicle, and then avoid the gimas chasadim. As Maral says, Ulafikach shleimus ha'adam atzmai, the completion of the person himself. Achu nechshav habriya hachashuva, until he's considered that distinguished creature, sheyesh bei hatov, that in him is the good, which then he could serve God and serve people, hu bishvil haTorah, is because of the Torah. So therefore, the first one of the three pillars is Torah, is of the self. And then we could have avoiding gimas chasadim. Then after we have the luches, then we could engrave in it the first 5 commandments, that of Bein Adam Lamakom, and then the second 5 of Bein Adam Lachaver.